Hello, welcome to another edition of the Fifth Quarter. I'm Mike Ciarochi, sports editor of the Herald-Standard newspaper, and I'm joined as always by George Von Benko, the author of Memory Lane and WMBS radio personality, who is fresh back from a trip to the Steelers locker room.
Yes, I usually go down on Wednesdays and chat with the boys in the locker room, find out what's going on. And interesting week this week because I like to call it Pittsburgh West.
Yeah.
The Arizona Cardinals.
Steelers traveling out to Arizona to take on Ken Whisenhunt, Russ Grimm,
Ray Horton.
Ray Horton, three coaches, well, actually four coaches. As we just mentioned, Mike Miller, the wide receivers coach, was in Pittsburgh not as a coach but as a PR intern of all things.
Now he's the wide receiver coach, and boy, that's a tough job with Larry Fitzgerald. You know, a real tough job.
A few years ago, we ran into him on a trip out to Arizona and saw him on a Saturday night before the game, and another writer and I razzed him pretty good. You know, tough job. You have Larry Fitz. At the time they had Steve Breston and Anquan Bolden.
Go get them, boys.
Yeah, that's the old roll the football out and kind of try not to get in their way. But,
and plus, you know, the connections that Ben Roethlisberger was talking about, some of the guys, Clark Hagan's, Joey Porter, Nick Eason.
Yeah.
There's a lot of connections.
I didn't realize Nick Eason was with Arizona this year. And, of course, Russ Grimm, recent Hall of Fame inductee from right up the road in Scottsdale. It'll be good to see those guys. Their team is struggling. I would say, it would be safe to say, a 1-4 record, I believe, at this point.
Yeah, they're having some problems, but they will be. Well, anytime the Steelers play anybody, it's circled on their schedule.
Yeah.
The Steelers are circled on their schedule. But particularly this one, with all the connections, those guys would two guys thought they were going to be possibly head coach.
That's right. First Whisenhunt name was being bandied about, and after he took the Arizona job, Russ Grimm's name was front and center, and there were reports that he was actually offered the job. I don't know that we could get that confirmed by anybody, but anyway, he ended up on his feet. The assistant head coach too was in Arizona, and you know these two teams know what they're going to see. They know how to practice for each other.
You know, it's funny. There are some injuries this week. Palomalo was cleared to play. Harrison is still out. The big snack, Casey Hampton, is still out. Aaron Smith is still out, and that creates some problems on the defensive line. And it looks like and Chris Hope is not going to play. He's still hoping he can get it because he had a stinger, but the official thing was that he was going to be out. What we got from the Steelers. So that moves Steve McClendon, who played a little bit in the last ball game, into nose tackle. And I asked him about I said, you know, these guys are so familiar. A lot of things they do are like the Steelers. He says, yes. He says, but we still have to prepare as if it's a completely different team, because while they do some things the way that we do them, our game plan is going to be completely different. We have to go after them, in a different way. So it is easy in some respects, but there still is work to be done.
And Mike Tomlin alluded to that in his press conference earlier in the week. He's saying, we know how to practice. Our scout team can give us a very true, realistic look at what Arizona does. But Arizona can get a very good look from its scout team on what we do. So it's a kind of an interesting mix. It'll be fun to see how it plays out.
I thought the questioning of Ben Roethlisberger today was interesting. One of the questions was, Ray Horton is the defensive coordinator. Do you have the advantage knowing Ray as you do, or does he have the advantage? And Ben said, well, you might think I would have the advantage. He says, but, he put the scout teams together a lot of times that, he was shuffling the deck against me for like 7 years, so he may have an advantage.
Yeah, well, you know what, and really, I think all the coaches, if we had them all in the room here right now with us and asked them the question, they would say it means absolutely nothing. The preparation, you prepare your team for what you do best, and you go out and play.
And that was the overriding factor today. The Steelers all said to a man when I talked to them, listen, we have to do what we do.
Right.
And we have to do it better than we've been doing it.
Yes.
And that's what we're worried about right now. It makes for interesting storylines. Dick LeBeau was chuckling when I saw him today. in the lunch line, and I mentioned all those guys, and he said, "Oh, it's going to be good to see those guys. I'm looking forward to it."
Did he buy lunch for you today?
Yeah. Dick's very magnanimous that way, I usually DeFabio's my pigeon, but
yeah. But what what the Steelers do best, what they hope to do best, is to keep the running game going first and foremost.
Yeah, and I mentioned that to Antonio Brown when I talked to him today. He said, "Oh, it was great to see that happen." He said, "We can still take that up a couple more notches." He says, "The second half, we didn't do anything particularly well." And he said there were some factors. They had the ball an awful lot. He says, "But we became a little disjointed with some of the things we were doing." He said, "Believe me, it was brought to our attention," he said, "this week in the film study."
Yeah, the Steelers had over 300 yards in the first half, and 55, I believe, sticking in my head.
It was 55
half.
yards. Only 19 of that was passing.
Right,
Yeah.
and that was on one play. So and as Coach Tomlin alluded to immediately after the game, it's a good thing to have a win off of a performance like that, so that you can go back and look at it critically, make improvements, make adjustments, and move on from there. It's much better to have that than it would be coming off a loss.
One other key player that they are getting back is Mwelde Moore, who's their third down back.
That's good.
He practiced, and that will change some of their packages on third down and some of the things. We may even see a screen pass.
Oh,
I don't want to get you excited,
Yeah. It's been a little while, but that is, I'm certain, part of the repertoire that the Steelers are preparing for this weekend. And you look defensively, you kind of have to wonder how much longer they can survive, I guess you would say, with only 1/3 of their starting defensive line, without James Harrison in the mix. The front seven is still a beaten up group.
It is. Usually when you think about one of the lines being beat up, it's the offensive line, and they are going to be different again this week too, because Legursky is out. But I asked Steve McClendon about that, and he said, "I'm prepared to go in." And he says, "We all practice all the positions." He said, "We are interchangeable." He says, "I can play outside, I can play inside. Ziggy can play nose tackle if he has to, or he can play outside." He said, "We are all interchangeable on the defensive line." Now, he says, Casey does his thing and other people do their things, but, those pieces are interchangeable, he said, and everybody just has to step up. He says, "We can't worry about who we don't have."
Right.
Sound a little bit like Coach Tomlin.
Is this McClendon's first start with the Steelers?
I believe it is his first start.
Maybe he'll have to start his own streak like Chris Hokie has going.
Right. He did play at the end of the game last week against Jacksonville. And the other thing is, Ziggy Hood made a point today of saying that he's so glad that Kiesel's back, because sometimes he was playing behind Kiesel. He likes playing on the other side better, which is, I believe, the left side. And he said he's much more comfortable over there. He actually leads the team in quarterback pressures. Somebody pointed that out to him, and he said, "Well, that's all well and good. I prefer sacks." Is what Ziggy said. "I prefer sacks."
Sacks money in your wallet.
Right.
But McClendon, I mentioned that the Chris Hoke stat. I guess I should come forward and just say the whole thing. He's 17-1 as a starter. The Steelers are 17-1 when Chris Hoke is a starter at nose tackle. Hopefully McClendon can start his career as a starter 1-0. I think that the Steelers would take that.
So it's an interesting test because they are a wounded football team, but they do have some weapons. I mean, they've got a new quarterback. Before the last time they faced him in that Super Bowl game, they faced him after that, I believe, too. But the Super Bowl game was Kurt Warner, who was an established veteran quarterback. Things didn't work out with Matt Leinart and some of the other things they did. Now they traded for Kevin Cobb, who was the former Eagle. And he's been a little bit dicey. He still has people to throw to. And they still have Beanie Wells, who's averaging 4.8 yards a carry.
He kind of has rejuvenated the running game out in the desert. And anytime you have Larry Fitzgerald to throw to, I think your passing game is going to be okay. Now, surprisingly to me anyway, the Steelers are still among the league leaders in pass defense. Now, they could get their sternest test in terms of a passing game this weekend.
It might be. I think the thing with a lot of the teams was they were giving up a lot of yards on the ground, and they still gave up 94 yards to
MJ Drew.
Maurice Jones-Drew. So it wasn't as if they. I mean, it was a soft 94 yards, but still it was 94 yards.
I think you'd have a hard time getting Maurice Jones-Drew to admit it was.
Well, he was bouncing off people bruises. Like a bowling ball, and we watched him do that quite a few times. But it was 94 yards that didn't really factor in except on the one drive.
No, it really didn't. It really didn't affect the outcome of the game, except for the 17-play drive and actually the biggest part of that drive was the penalty on the punt.
And that kept it alive because they were actually off the field. Now, looking at the defense, you're going to see a lot of familiar faces for Arizona. We mentioned Joey Porter, Clark Haggans, Nick Eason, and Ray Horton, of course, the former defensive backfield coach, is the coordinator out there. They do a lot of things very similar. They've been spotty. The defense has bere spotty for Arizona.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, keep the spots there from a Steelers perspective.
Well, we can also say that there are a couple of times when the offense for the Steelers has been a little spotty.
True. Yeah, they've been spotty a good bit in all three phases of the game.
One thing kept coming up throughout the day. Everybody I talked to from the offensive side of the ball: third down conversions, consistency. Just keep it rolling. Keep it rolling.
Yeah, they did pretty well in the first half, third down, converting third downs. In the second half, I think what did they get? They got one when they needed it. I know that. Late in the fourth quarter.
And the other thing that people talked about is they still would like to do something about the discrepancy in turnovers and takeaways.
They need to create a couple.
And McClendon said we can only do what we can do. We'll try and do some things there, but there's still a big discrepancy. As I said, one of the big stats in the last ball game, I was so surprised that neither team, as badly as they played at some points during the game, committed a turnover.
But any good defensive coach, I'm sure Dick LeBeau would say it too. They come in bunches.
They do. One other thing that bears watching, and that is Patrick Peterson. The number one draft pick out of LSU, the quarterback, an outstanding return man. So he bears watching because he could cause problems on special teams.
He's a starting corner as well?
He starts at cornerback, but I remember him in college, and he's doing a little bit of it here in the pros. He's a good kickoff guy, a great punt returner.
Okay. That's interesting. And as the rest of the league, seemingly, the rest of the league is preparing for new quarterbacks this weekend. I believe there are 3 teams in the NFL that will have new starting
John Beck is starting for the Redskins.
Beck, he started last week, though, I believe. Carson Palmer.
Carson Palmer with the Raiders.
Donovan McNabb got benched, and who's the starter up in Minnesota?
Ponder.
Rookie, Christian Ponder.
Christian Ponder, the former Florida State player.
Yeah. So at least these 2 teams in the desert know who their quarterback will be on Sunday and beyond. Talk a little bit about Kevin Cobb moving over from Philadelphia.
Yeah, he's a guy that has always been one of those guys that has that tag, great potential, but he never seems to really put it all together. But he had some big games for Philadelphia when he was forced into action out there. It hasn't translated as well out in Arizona, but if he's given some time, just like any quarterback, he can,
I think this is a good opportunity for him. In Philadelphia, he was actually the opening day starter last year, and a young guy named Mike Vick came in and stole it away from him. But now he's the main man in Arizona.
But it just boils down to what we said before. Pittsburgh has to take care of their own business. This is a winnable game. Yes, it's on the road, but it is a very, very winnable. But it's also a game that they've got to be careful.
Yes. They only won once on the road earlier this year, and it was a game they should have won. What do you think this weekend?
I like the Steelers, like maybe 17-10 or something like that.
Okay. I also like the Steelers to win this game. I guess I'll put a 21-10 on it, just so we're different. Huh?
Okay.
All right, and that'll do it for this edition of the 5th Quarter. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.